Every manufacturer has a catalog of their work, some good, some not so good. They have their go-to models, the ones that made them rich over the years, and then they have others they tried once and never again. Today, I want to look at the ones that make you turn your head. Could be for a good reason or a bad one, but one thing's for sure, these coasters are out of the box. These are every manufacturer's weirdest coaster. Not every manufacturer has a weird coaster. I mean, they might be weird in general, but I want to find coasters that are weird for the manufacturer. Skyline makes some weird looking coasters, but short and repetitive is what they're known for. Maybe, when they open their Pescetti coaster, we can talk. On the other hand, Giovanola is known for their hypers, but they got their start with a small inverted coaster in South Africa. With a catalog of just 3 coasters, it's hard to call one an oddball. PTC never stepped outside their box in their decades of making wooden coasters, and RMC is only about 1 decade old, so I wouldn't call anything that they've made as weird. Morgan's coaster count didn't even reach double digits, but most of them were huge. That is, except their boardwalk coaster, West Coaster, and their mine train, Quicksilver Express. Pinfari makes a lot of portable coasters that seem like you can bend them by hand, so when you see their models have a tiny loop, that can make you a little nervous. The Din Corporation focused on building some of the biggest wooden coasters of the 80s and 90s, but nothing was really weird, aside from Charles Din's first project, the Beast. Especially for 1979, but even today, the size and scale of that project alone makes it a special ride. RCCA was a contemporary of Din, also making big wooden coasters, but aside from the Rattler being built on, around, and through a quarry wall, nothing really stands out. You may think it's hard for a wooden coaster manufacturer to make a weird ride, but that's not true. The modern ones have some pretty strong entries on this list. Let's start with Aerodynamics, the company that revolutionized the modern steel coaster. They built the earliest launch coasters and broke every inversion record out there. And I know they built a looping coaster on top of a mountain that covers well over a mile of track. Dragon Mountain takes the silver medal on this one, but you have to go with X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. When this opened, there was never anything remotely like it. No coaster had ever placed riders on either side of the track. This went up the lift hill backward. It has an extra set of rails that control the way the seats flip, and depending if you're under the track or on top of the track, you may be moving forward or backward. On top of being extreme, X2 is a weird ride. B&M likes to play it safe, stick with what they know. Sometimes they'll add a random launch. They're building a shuttle wing coaster at Chessington World of Adventures. Now they're trying to simulate surfing while on a coaster. Sometimes they'll twist their elements to make them shaped all weird. Look at Hydra at Dorney Park. But one thing is for sure, they only make extreme coasters. Well, except for the Family Inverts. There are 2 parks in China that have pint-sized B&Ms, about 66 feet tall, about 1,300 feet of track, 30-mile-per-hour top speed, and riders sit 2 across and have vest-style restraints, just with no vest. These look very similar to the Vekoma or S&S model, so it's interesting that they offer this. And over the last 9 years, only 2 have been sold. Custom Coasters International, or CCI, was around for 10 years, and much like Aero, they waited until their last year to get weird. The clear and obvious pick here is Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain at Indiana Beach. This used to be a dark ride inside a fake mountain, and for some reason, Indiana Beach wanted a coaster here, and not just any coaster, a wooden coaster. They did a lot of work with CCI, so they went back to them to see what they can do. We got a very short ride that starts with an elevator lift, 2-car enclosed trains where riders face each other, and even though it only hits 20 miles per hour, it's a wild ride. It's a lot of fun, and I'm convinced that CCI did as much as they possibly could have done with it. Chance Rides has only built 43 coasters, and all but 10 of them are toboggans. I guess this doesn't make them weird, but at the same time, yeah, these are weird. You sit in a little enclosed car. Good luck if you're over 5'10". Up an enclosed vertical lift. And by the way, I hope you're not claustrophobic. And then you spiral down the tower until you hit some unfortunate airtime hills. You don't want airtime when your head is up against the roof. These were so popular in the 60s and 70s. I'm convinced just because it was so small, cheap, and portable. Great Coasters International, or GCI, has played it pretty straight. I think they've been pretty normal up until this year. Their weirdest coaster is Zambezi Zinger at Worlds of Fun. The main reason for this, obviously, is the spiral lift hill. Worlds of Fun, for their 50th anniversary, wanted to bring back the spirit of a park original, the Schwarzkopf Speed Racer, also called Zambezi Zinger. Using their new Titan track, GCI was able to recreate this on a wooden coaster. The rest of the ride is your basic wooden twister layout, but that lift hill alone makes this GCI's weirdest coaster. Gerstlauer is known for their Eurofighters and their spinners, but up until this year, they only had one coaster that hangs under the track, and that's geared towards families. In 2023, they're opening Storm, the Dragon Legend at Tusenfryd, Norway. This is an inverted coaster with a multi-pass LSM launch, just their third coaster to use one and the first one that's under the track. They stepped outside their comfort zone for this one. Gravity Group is a manufacturer that has been pushing the limits of a wooden coaster ever since they started. When you start with Hades in the Voyage, you think the sky is the limit. They've worked inversions into some of their rides, but they've really found a niche with family-friendly wooden coasters. These aren't weird, except for one, Switchback at ZDT's amusement park. The stats aren't impressive. 64 feet tall, 41 miles per hour, less than 1,200 feet of track. But this was the first wooden shuttle coaster, and as of 2023, still the only one. It uses a spike to make the train go backward, and uses a switch track to get the train back to the station. This is a novelty, and it was necessary. ZDT's is a tiny family fun center, and this was the only way to fit a coaster of this size on that spot. It was a brilliant idea, and very well executed. Hopkins only built 7 coasters, some mild, some more extreme, but all of them are a little bit off. Just a little weird. The one that's a lot a bit weird is Texas Tornado at Wonderland. The layout is simple enough. A drop, a loop, a hill, a turnaround, and one more drop into a loop. But those loops are an absolute marvel to look at. Both of them had problems. It looks like they had to sharpen the pullout of the first one and lower the height of the second one. The ride actually runs pretty well, but it's hard to get over the fact that it looks like it was designed by a 5-year-old. Intamin isn't afraid to step outside the box and do something brave. We saw this with Volcano the Blast Coaster, launching an inverted coaster for the first time, and doing so inside the existing mountain. For Intamin, I'm going with Tornado at Bakken. Spinning coasters aren't really a new thing for Intamin. They have their share out there, especially their half-pipe model. But on Tornado, you sit in what looks like a ball, 2 seats on each side facing each other. You go up a lift chain that's so fast it's practically a launch, and you can choose to ride in normal mode or boost mode, which looks absolutely off the wall. It's not a long ride at just over 1,100 feet, but there are indoor and outdoor sections, and it looks to be the adult version of a Gerstlauer Spinner. Jinma is the Chinese manufacturer known for knocking off other manufacturers, and for their weirdest coaster, it's no different. Battle of Jungle King at Hefei Sunac Land in China, a Vekoma tilt coaster knockoff. This one is weird because it's a dueling tilt coaster, or as they call it, a broken rail coaster, but the drop angle doesn't look all that steep. One side has a barrel roll, the other a double barrel roll for some reason. So I guess the Tiger and the Dragon side are separate credits. You also must be between 55 and 75 inches, so 4'7" to 6'3", and you can't exceed 198 pounds. So if you happen to be slightly above average, watch out. Mack Rides was all about their powered coasters and wild mouse coasters until the 21st century, and they've really branched out and gotten weird. We saw this with their extreme spinner model, but their weirdest coaster has to be Arthur at Europa Park. This is one of their inverted powered coasters. Arthur is very well themed, and not only is this Mack's only model where the train is under the track, the cars also spin. The train is powered by the track itself, and it really serves as more of a dark ride than a coaster, hitting a top speed of only 19.3 miles per hour. Maurer was a tough one. I was really torn between 2 models. Desmo Race at Mirabolandia is a racing single-rail coaster, where riders are on a motorcycle and can actually choose where to accelerate, but the one that I'm going with is the Skyloop. There are 10 of these out there. Abismo at Parque de Atracciones in Madrid is probably the most complex, but they all have that vertical lift that flips you backward right into the Skyloop element, a double inversion that dives the train back to the station. It doesn't even cover 500 feet of track, but it's a one-of-a-kind experience. Pax is a Russian manufacturer that made some very interesting rides. People seem to rave about Wild Train at Austria's Fantasiana, despite looking like a family coaster. But for Pax, it's gotta be the one and only ride with a scorpion tail, Cobra at Connieland. This starts with a reverse lift hill at a beyond vertical angle, back through the station into some airtime hills, a vertical loop, and then the defining moment, the scorpion tail, wrapping up and over the loop. To say this provides hang time is a massive understatement. Then you do it all backwards. Again, this looks like it was designed by a kid, but it was brought to life by Pax. Premier Rides focuses on short launch coasters, and these are generally unspectacular. That being said, there is one that stands out big time. Roundabout at Freestyle Music Park. This was also known as Maximum RPM when it was called Hard Rock Park. But despite having 2 names, it only operated for 2 years. This might have the most creative lift hill of all time, the Ferris wheel lift. Cars would latch on inside a pod and ride a Ferris wheel up to the top. That's where the ride would start. If this was on a by the numbers video, I would have to count the lift as prime ride time. It's just too awesome. It may not be the most efficient way to get the train up there, but it makes the ride interesting. S&S Sensei has no shortage of weird coasters. Taking the gold is their Screaming Squirrel coasters, featuring the ever so bizarre saxophone element. You go up a lift and then work your way down. These turns are honestly like 180-degree drops. These are technically the steepest drops in the world. They're just not considered drops. You hang upside down and then straighten out, only to do it again. There was a variant of this in Russia called Afterburner. This one is more simple, but looks even more messed up. Only 3 of these were built, but it looks like a cool experience. The SBF Visa Group has found a gold mine in selling their figure-8 spinning coasters. But over the last couple of years, they found a way to spice up their family coasters. The hamster wheel. You sit in a car that can make 360-degree rotations, and that's awesome for any thrill seeker, even if the ride has a basic oval layout. This was a brilliant move by SBF, allowing for a mild ride in the back and an extreme ride in the front. And lucky for us, this seems to only be getting more popular. Schwarzkopf was an innovator back in the 70s, introducing those round vertical loops into the coaster world, and doing so on portable coasters that traveled all over the world. Their weirdest coaster has to be the one currently known as Bullet at Selva Magica. This is a shuttle loop, but it's unlike any shuttle loop out there. It doesn't use a flywheel or a weight drop launch. It uses tires to launch the train backwards, up a spike. Then the tires push the train forward through the station, around a bend, through a loop that wraps around the station, and then up another spike that connects with the first one, kind of like a Vekoma boomerang. This is a very interesting twist on a classic model. Togo is a very old school manufacturer. They even have steel coasters that predate aerodynamics. Of all their coasters out there, I think their weirdest is Cycle Coaster and Inakyo Wonderland in Japan. It's a very flat course with some turns and very mild dips, and you actually have pedals that you can use while you're on the ride. Apparently, they don't do anything, or hardly do anything, but the very idea of this coaster is just bizarre. Vekoma has been making coasters for over 40 years, and some of these are kinda strange. I'm talking about their Big Air model, their tilt coaster, of course, and their Stingray, a very odd take on their Flying Dutchman. You also got their new for 2022 Super Boomerang coming to China, and this has some very bizarre elements. For Vekoma, I'm going with their Splash Party model. This is a weird concept in general, but not an original one. Setpoint was making these interactive water coaster models going back to the early 2000s. It's a low-speed suspended coaster, where people on the ground level could fire water cannons at the train. But the train is equipped with water guns also, so riders can fight back. It's a cool concept, and this one, called Bandit Bomber at Yas Wonderland, has been in operation since 2013. Wiegand is known for making Alpine coasters, but they have a handful of suspended single-rail coasters called the Mystical Hex. Some of these have standard 2 across cars, others have seats that face each other, but their weirdest one has to be Ski Lift Shootout Coaster at Rowdy Bear Smoky Mountain Snow Park. This one was equipped with a laser gun, so this already weird suspended mountain coaster also has an interactive element, just to add one more crazy way to amuse yourself in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Zamperla has a ton of small coasters out there, but of their 350 plus coasters around the world, only one is inverted. That's Puss in Boots' Giant Journey at Universal Studios Singapore. The theming adds to the bizarreness. Riders sitting in 3-row, 9-seat carriages, starting with a spiral lift like you see on their Volare models. Those Volares are also technically inverted, but they're considered flying coasters. So this officially is Zamperla's only inverted coaster, and it looks like a nice, well-themed, pretty mild family ride. Zierer was a tough one. None of their coasters are all that normal, but also not overly weird. I mean, they have rides with trains that never end, or that launch you up a vertical spike. But for them, I had to go with Puritan Spinner at Friesland Gieselwind. I know I butchered that, so I'm sorry. It's a pretty basic layout, starting with a booster lift, going around a partially indoor helix and back to the station, but it does it in those janky looking spinning cars. This was the first real spinning coaster built in more than 4 decades, and Zierer never made another one again, even after the spinning coaster caught on again over the last 30 years. That's all for every manufacturer's weirdest coaster. Let me know what you think of my picks. And of course, if you have any other coaster that should have been mentioned, sound off in the comments below. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like. And if you're new here and love coaster rankings, please give me a sub. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you also happen to love baseball. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.